My beloved child, stop for a moment before you continue on your way. Something has been waiting for you, and it has chosen this exact moment to find you. There are messages that arrive through ordinary conversations, and then there are messages carried by the whisper of eternity, messages that feel as though they have crossed unseen distances just to reach one searching heart. This is one of those moments. Listen carefully, not because these words predict your future, but because this is a fictional story told through the voice of heaven, created to awaken hope, reflection, and courage within you. Last night, while the world believed everything had become quiet, a conversation unfolded that neither you nor anyone around you could hear. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. Yet every sentence carried the weight of years of hidden emotion. Your soulmate sat with thoughts they had buried for far too long, and for the first time, those thoughts escaped the walls they had built around their heart. What they said left everyone around them completely silent, not because they hated you, not because they regretted meeting you, but because they had finally uncovered a truth about you that overturned everything they believed they understood. Do not rush ahead. Every piece of this story matters. For a long time, your soulmate believed they were the one making every important decision. They believed they had chosen when to move closer, when to pull away, when to protect themselves, and when to keep you at a distance. They believed they understood the connection well enough to control it, yet something unexpected happened. Life began revealing pieces of you that they had never taken the time to see. At first, they resisted those discoveries. They convinced themselves they already knew who you were. After all, how often do people mistake familiarity for understanding? How often do hearts assume they have learned everything about another soul simply because they have shared conversations, laughter, or silence? Far too often, your soulmate realized they had not truly seen you. They had only seen the version of you that fit inside their expectations. As this realization grew, another emotion emerged. One they were ashamed to admit: regret. Not the regret of loving you, the regret of misunderstanding you. They replayed countless memories in their mind, each one appearing different than before. Conversations they once dismissed suddenly carried hidden meaning. Moments they thought were ordinary now seemed extraordinary. Gestures they barely acknowledged became impossible to forget. Something inside them whispered, "How could I have missed this?" And that question refused to leave. My beloved child, there are seasons when truth arrives gently, like morning light entering through a window. Then there are seasons when truth crashes into the heart all at once, exposing every mistaken assumption in a single moment. Your soulmate entered the second season. They discovered something about your character that made them question every judgment they had ever formed. It was not wealth. It was not status. It was not beauty. It was not success. It was something infinitely rarer. They realized your strength had never depended upon applause. While others searched desperately for validation, you quietly carried burdens no one noticed. While people assumed your silence meant weakness, heaven knew it was often restraint. While many measured worth through recognition, you continued giving kindness where no reward existed. Your soulmate had overlooked that. And the realization hurt, not because you had deceived them, because they had deceived themselves. Still, this was only the beginning. As the evening continued, someone asked them a simple question. If they mean so much to you now, why didn't you see it before? Silence filled the room. The answer remained trapped inside them. Eventually, they whispered words they never imagined saying aloud. I thought I was choosing them. Another pause. But now I think they were teaching me. The room became still. No one interrupted. No one laughed. Because everyone sensed those words carried more truth than your soulmate fully understood. That single confession changed the direction of the entire conversation. One family member leaned forward and quietly asked, "What changed your mind?" Your soulmate closed their eyes. They remembered every moment you remained patient while they were confused. They remembered every time you chose honesty instead of manipulation. They remembered the times you respected boundaries instead of forcing outcomes. And suddenly they understood something shocking. You had never been trying to control them. You had simply been authentic. That authenticity became impossible to ignore. For years, they believed relationships required constant performance. Then they encountered you, someone who could be gentle without pretending, strong without becoming cold, compassionate without surrendering self-respect. Your presence exposed the difference between love and emotional dependency, and that frightened them, not because authenticity is dangerous, because authenticity leaves no place for masks. Your soulmate slowly realized they had been wearing one for much longer than they admitted. Every defense, every excuse, every emotional retreat, every carefully timed silence. They saw those patterns with new eyes. Suddenly they were not evaluating you anymore. They were confronting themselves. That was the true shock. It is always easier to judge another heart than to examine our own. Yet heaven has a mysterious way of placing mirrors inside meaningful connections. Sometimes your soulmate was never meant to discover who you were first. Sometimes they needed to discover who they had become. That discovery was painful. As the conversation deepened, another surprising statement escaped them. I kept thinking they weren't enough. Their voice trembled. When the truth is I wasn't ready to receive someone like them. Those words landed heavily upon everyone listening. Because pride rarely admits defeat. Fear rarely introduces itself honestly. Yet last night both pride and fear lost their grip for a brief moment. The truth finally entered. My beloved child, hear this carefully. This fictional message is not asking you to believe someone secretly thinks these exact words about you. Instead, it invites you to reflect upon a timeless possibility. Sometimes people fail to recognize genuine hearts until they are forced to confront their own limitations. Sometimes distance reveals value that familiarity concealed. Sometimes losing certainty becomes the beginning of wisdom. Your soulmate's imagined story continued unfolding. Another family member quietly asked, "So what exactly did you discover?" The answer did not come immediately. Instead, they looked toward the window. Outside, darkness stretched across the sky. Inside, memories stretched across their heart. Finally they answered. And I mistook that for weakness, silence again, because everyone understood. There is enormous difference between someone begging for love and someone offering love freely. Your soulmate had confused those two realities. Only now could they see it. That realization became almost unbearable. They remembered moments when your kindness could have been exploited. Yet you never abandoned your dignity. They remembered opportunities where anger would have been easier, yet you chose peace, not because you lacked emotion, because your spirit refused to become what had once wounded you. That truth unsettled them more than they expected. For years they believed emotional power belonged to whoever walked away first. Now they questioned everything. Perhaps emotional power belonged to the one who remained genuine without surrendering wisdom. That possibility echoed through their thoughts long after everyone stopped speaking. Yet another revelation approached. One relative quietly smiled and asked, "Do you still think choosing them was a mistake?" Your soulmate lowered their head. When they finally answered, tears stood silently within their eyes. "No." Another pause. "My mistake wasn't choosing them." The room leaned closer. "My mistake," their voice almost disappeared, "was believing I understood the gift standing in front of me." Those words left everyone speechless, not because they sounded dramatic, because they sounded honest. Honesty possesses extraordinary weight. It does not shout, it simply settles into every listening heart. Still, there remains one detail they have not confessed, one truth too vulnerable even for that conversation. One realization that explains why they seemed almost haunted as everyone slowly left the room. It concerned something they uncovered about you only after watching your actions from afar, not your appearance, not your accomplishments, not your reputation, something much deeper, something spiritual. Something they never expected to recognize. For the first time they began wondering whether your greatest quality had been hidden inside the very trait they once criticized most. The patience they misunderstood, the quiet they underestimated, the compassion they questioned. Those qualities suddenly formed a pattern impossible to dismiss. The pattern pointed toward one astonishing conclusion. You were never trying to win. You were trying to remain true to who heaven created you to become. That realization broke something inside them, because they understood they had spent years trying to impress people, while you had been quietly trying to preserve your soul. The difference was immeasurable. Even after everyone went to sleep, they remained awake. They replayed every conversation, every misunderstanding, every opportunity they allowed fear to steal. Then, in the deepest hour of the night, they whispered one sentence no one else heard, a sentence so personal they could barely admit it even to themselves. "If only I had seen who they truly were sooner." Those words lingered in the darkness. No answer came immediately. Only silence, yet sometimes silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is preparation, because another realization was approaching them, one that would challenge everything they believed about destiny, forgiveness, and the mysterious purpose behind your connection. And when that realization finally reaches their heart, it will force a decision they can no longer postpone. But that decision depends upon one hidden truth they have only just begun to uncover, the truth about who you really are beneath everything the world has assumed. and the moment they finally speak it aloud, nothing between your two souls will ever feel the same again. My beloved child, stop for a moment before you continue with your day. Do not dismiss what has brought you here. There are messages that people search for their entire lives, and then there are messages that search for them. This is one of those moments. Something unseen has been unfolding while you were busy trying to understand your own heart. What you are about to hear has been waiting for the exact moment when your spirit was ready to receive it. If you feel an unexplainable pull to remain here until the very end, do not ignore it. That quiet feeling is not an accident. There is a conversation that took place beyond your sight, and although your ears never heard it, your soul has already sensed its echoes. Someone connected to your destiny has reached a place they never imagined they would reach. They are wrestling with emotions they cannot explain, questions they cannot answer, and a truth they never expected to uncover. They keep replaying every choice that brought them to this point, and in the silence of their own thoughts. They have whispered words they never believed they would say. They have cursed themselves, not because you failed them, not because your heart was empty, not because your love was false, but because they have finally begun discovering something about you that completely changed the way they see everything. Remain with this message, because if you leave now, you may miss the one piece that causes every unanswered question to finally make sense. The truth is not what fear has been telling you. It is far deeper than appearances. Heaven has not brought you here to feed anxiety. It has brought you here to reveal perspective. For a long time, your soulmate believed they understood you. They thought they had placed you into a category their mind could comfortably explain. They assumed your kindness was ordinary. They assumed your patience came naturally. They assumed your loyalty required no sacrifice. They looked at your calmness and mistook it for simplicity. They admired certain qualities but never realized what those qualities truly cost you. Then something happened. It was not dramatic enough for the world to notice. No thunder shook the sky, no voice echoed through the air. Instead, it arrived quietly, almost invisibly. A memory returned. A forgotten conversation resurfaced. A small detail suddenly connected with another detail. A realization entered their minds so unexpectedly that they stopped in the middle of what they were doing. And for the first time, they asked themselves a question they should have asked long ago. What if I never truly saw who they are? That question became impossible to silence. Since that moment, every memory of you has started changing shape inside their heart. Conversations they once considered ordinary now seem extraordinary. Moments they once ignored now feel sacred. Gestures they barely acknowledged suddenly carry meanings they completely missed. It is as though someone removed a veil from their eyes, allowing them to witness the truth hidden beneath everything they thought they understood. This realization has not brought them peace, it has brought them regret, because they are beginning to understand that while they were searching for perfection, they overlooked something infinitely more valuable. They overlooked authenticity. They overlooked sincerity. They overlooked the rarest kind of soul, and now they cannot stop wondering how differently everything might have unfolded if they had recognized your worth before fear clouded their judgment. Do not misunderstand these words. This message is not declaring that your soulmate suddenly became flawless or that every difficulty has disappeared. Human hearts rarely transform overnight. Yet there comes a moment when truth becomes impossible to ignore, and your soulmate has reached that moment. They have discovered that your greatest strength was never what the world applauded. It was what you endured without applause. They remember the times you smiled while carrying burdens no one else noticed. They remember moments when you offered understanding even after experiencing disappointment. They remember your willingness to forgive when resentment would have been easier. They remember how you continued believing in goodness after encountering people who gave you every reason to become cold. At the time, they admired those qualities. Now they understand them. And understanding has become heavier than admiration, because once someone truly recognizes the value they almost lost, every careless decision begins returning like an echo. That is exactly where your soulmate stands today. There have been nights when they replay conversations word for word, searching for hidden meanings they completely overlooked. They remember the pauses between your sentences. They remember the emotions behind your eyes. They remember the moments when you almost revealed your deepest feelings before quietly protecting yourself instead. Only now do they realize you were protecting yourself because you sensed uncertainty long before they admitted it. This realization unsettles them. Not because it accuses them, because it exposes them. It reveals how often they interpreted your silence incorrectly while never examining their own. Your soulmate has started recognizing that many of the problems they blamed on circumstances were actually born from fear. Fear disguised itself as hesitation. Fear disguised itself as independence. Fear disguised itself as waiting for the perfect moment, but fear has a habit of convincing people there will always be another opportunity. Sometimes there is, sometimes there is not. That uncertainty has begun haunting them. There is another layer heaven wants you to understand. Your soulmate recently learned something that no one else could have explained to them. It was not revealed through another person. It was revealed through absence. Your reduced energy forced them into a My beloved child, stop for a moment before you continue with anything else, because what you are about to hear did not arrive by accident. There are messages that simply entertain the mind, and then there are messages that seem to find the soul at the exact moment they are needed. This is one of those moments. Slow your racing thoughts. Quiet the voices that have been telling you that nothing is changing. Something has already begun to move behind the scenes, and if you leave before hearing this, you may miss the very truth your heart has been searching for. Your spirit has been asking questions that your lips have never spoken aloud. You have wondered why certain connections felt so intense. Why someone entered your life only to leave confusion behind. Why emotions refused to disappear even after silence settled between you. Those questions have reached heaven, and while every mystery is not meant to be explained immediately, today a veil is being lifted. Listen carefully, because this message is not about revenge, punishment, or fear. It is about revelation. It is about what happens when someone finally discovers that the person they thought they understood was carrying a destiny far greater than appearances could ever reveal. Last night, while your soulmate believed they were simply reflecting on the past, something unexpected unfolded inside them. A conversation, a memory, a realization, or perhaps even a dream caused pieces to come together in a way they never had before. Suddenly they began connecting moments they once dismissed. Words you spoke. Decisions you made. Times when you walked away instead of begging someone to stay. Times when you chose peace instead of chaos. What they once misunderstood now appeared in an entirely different light, and in that moment, they whispered something they never imagined they would say. I was wrong. Those words did not come easily. They carried the weight of pride collapsing under truth. For so long they believed they had fully figured you out. They convinced themselves that your kindness meant weakness. They mistook your patience for desperation. They interpreted your silence as emotional emptiness. Every assumption they built became a wall separating them from reality. Now that wall is beginning to crack. The truth emerging before them has become impossible to ignore. You were never who they assumed you were. You carried strength beneath gentleness. You carried wisdom beneath quietness. You carried discernment beneath compassion. And realizing this has shaken them more deeply than they ever expected. Stay with this message because what they uncovered next left them questioning nearly everything they believed about your connection. For a long time they secretly believed they had the upper hand. They assumed you would always remain emotionally available no matter how inconsistent they became. They imagined that if distance ever appeared between you, you would eventually be the one reaching back. But recently something changed. Your energy shifted. Perhaps you stopped chasing. Perhaps you stopped explaining yourself. Perhaps you began protecting your peace instead of protecting everyone's opinion of you. Whatever changed, your soulmate noticed. At first they tried convincing themselves it meant nothing. Then they realized they could no longer feel your emotional presence in the same way. That frightened them, not because control was disappearing, because certainty was disappearing. For the first time they realized they did not actually know what life would look like if you truly moved forward. That realization became the beginning of an awakening they never anticipated. They began replaying memories, one after another. Moments they once overlooked suddenly carried new meaning. They remembered how you celebrated others without needing attention. They remembered how you remained calm while everyone else reacted emotionally. They remembered how your intuition often proved correct long before evidence appeared. They remembered how you sensed dishonesty without needing proof. Each memory became another piece of a puzzle. Then something happened that left them completely unsettled. They began asking themselves a question they had never considered before. What if the person I underestimated was actually the greatest blessing I have ever encountered? That question echoed through their thoughts far longer than they expected. They tried distracting themselves. They immersed themselves in work. They scrolled endlessly. They laughed with people around them. Yet every distraction eventually returned them to the same uncomfortable realization: they may have misunderstood you completely. This is where the story becomes even more mysterious. Your soulmate has been discovering truths about you that were never hidden. They were simply unable to recognize them because they were looking through the lens of fear instead of wisdom. Fear distorts vision. Fear invents stories. Fear creates assumptions where conversations should exist. And your soulmate allowed fear to become their interpreter. They feared vulnerability. They feared commitment. They feared losing control. Most of all, they feared being deeply known by another soul. So when someone as genuine as you entered their life, instead of embracing what felt different, they questioned it. Instead of trusting peace, they searched for problems. Instead of receiving love, they analyzed it until confusion replaced clarity. But heaven has a way of exposing illusions when the appointed time arrives. The illusion is ending. Your soulmate recently witnessed something about you, even if only from a distance, that disrupted every false conclusion they once carried. Perhaps they saw you thriving without seeking validation. Perhaps someone spoke highly of your character. Perhaps they heard about your growth. Perhaps they realized others respected qualities they once ignored. Whatever the circumstance, the effect was undeniable. They discovered that your value did not depend on their recognition. Your worth existed long before they acknowledged it. That realization wounded their pride while awakening their heart. There is another layer you have not seen. After this realization settled within them, they became unusually quiet. People around them noticed. They answered questions with shorter responses. Their laughter sounded forced. Their attention wandered. Externally they appeared composed. Internally they were wrestling with regret, because another realization soon followed. If everything they now believed about you was true, then every opportunity they neglected suddenly carried enormous weight. Every delayed conversation mattered. Every unnecessary misunderstanding mattered. Every silent goodbye mattered. They began seeing not only what happened. They began seeing what could have happened. That vision has become difficult to escape. There are nights when they imagine an entirely different timeline, one where fear never interrupted honesty, one where pride never replaced vulnerability, one where they simply trusted what their heart recognized from the beginning. Those imagined moments have become almost painfully vivid. Sometimes they smile while remembering you. Moments later they feel overwhelming sadness, because memory can comfort and confront at the same time. Yet the deepest revelation has still not arrived. What truly shook your soulmate was not merely discovering your strength, it was discovering why they were drawn toward you from the very beginning. For months they believed attraction explained everything. Then they believed curiosity explained everything. Then they convinced themselves loneliness explained everything. Now none of those explanations satisfy them anymore. Something deeper keeps pulling at their spirit. They cannot ignore it. They cannot logically explain it. Whenever they attempt convincing themselves you were simply another chapter, something within refuses agreement. Instead, an inner voice quietly reminds them, there was purpose here. Those words disturb and comfort them simultaneously. Purpose requires responsibility. Purpose demands honesty. Purpose asks questions pride cannot answer. And that is precisely where they now find themselves. Your soulmate has entered a season where old excuses no longer feel convincing. They cannot blame timing forever. They cannot blame circumstances forever. Eventually every soul must confront itself. That confrontation has begun. But here is the part very few people understand. Regret is not always loud. Sometimes regret appears as ordinary silence. Sometimes it looks like staring through a window while remembering someone who changed everything without realizing it. Sometimes regret is hidden inside conversations where a person's smile reaches everyone except their own heart. That is where your soulmate stands today. There are words they wish they had spoken, questions they wish they had asked, honesty they wish they had chosen before distance complicated everything, and there is one sentence repeating inside their mind more often than they admit. What if I lost someone heaven was trying to place in my life? Notice that question carefully. It is no longer about possession, it is about recognition. Recognition changes everything, because once someone truly recognizes value, ignoring it becomes impossible. Still, another mystery remains hidden. There is something your soulmate discovered about your spiritual character that has unsettled them more than any emotional realization. They noticed something extraordinary. Every difficult season you survived somehow produced greater compassion. Instead of bitterness, most people become harder. You became wiser. Most people seek revenge. You sought healing. Most people demanded recognition. You quietly continued growing.